Hello, U.S. history students. And in this, the first lesson of the week, dealing with World War I, we're going to review what we talked about last week about the build up to the war, and we're going to add a little map activity. We're going to label some key places on the map that we'll be talking about over the next couple of days. Okay. Now, as always, you can take your own notes on this presentation, but I highly recommend that you use the worksheet that I uploaded to Canvas simply because there's a map on it. Okay. So let's review. If you're using the worksheet, we're going to be down at the bottom first. Okay. We're going to do some of the fill in the blank stuff first, and then we're going to jump up to the map. Okay. So World War One begins. There's a powder keg in Europe. We talked about all these countries are competing to dominate each other. Okay, the strong countries are competing to dominate the weaker countries. We've got all these countries that have been through industrialization and they've built up stockpiles of weapons and they're not afraid to use them. Okay, and to top it all off, while all this tension is going on, a bunch of European countries have made alliances with each other, and they've agreed to help maintain each other's security. Now, that's not a bad idea. It's always nice to have friends, and it's always nice to have friends that will come to your aid in a pinch. But the problem is these alliances are secret. So nobody knows exactly who is on whose side. And if you go to war with one country, you might actually be going to war with 2 or 3 other countries that you don't want to fight with. So these European countries have been making these secret alliances, and that's going to add to the tension of the area. And we're just waiting for one event to set it all off. And that event will come on June the 28th, 1914. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. Franz Ferdinand is the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie are assassinated as they travel through Sarajevo and Bosnia. Okay, so the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife Sophie are killed as they travel through Sarajevo, okay, which is today is in Bosnia. They are killed by members of the Black Hand. Now, the Black Hand is a terrorist group. The country of Serbia claims no connection to the Black Hand, although the Black Hand did have some pretty big dealings with the Serbian military. Serbia swears it has no idea that they were planning to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand and his wife, but Austria-Hungary is still going to use this as an excuse to declare war and invade Serbia. Serbia had been giving them some problems for a while, and they want to put down this rebellion real quickly. Now, let's move up to the map, okay? Let's move up to the map up at the top here. It's Europe in 1914, all right? And I want to label a couple of key areas, and you guys can color in some of the key alliance systems, okay? Down here, this country right here, this is Serbia, okay? This is where the Black Hand is from. These are the guys that assassinate Archduke Ferdinand, all right? Up above them, here's Austria-Hungary. This is where Archduke Ferdinand is from. He's the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Over here, this big mass of land here, this is Russia. Okay, and we'll talk more about them in a second. Remember, Russia's on Serbia's side. When Serbia gets attacked by Austria-Hungary, Serbia calls in Russia. Austria-Hungary will then call in its ally, Germany. Here's Germany right there. Okay. Russia calls in its ally, France. Germany decides to invade France. When Germany decides to invade France, they cut through Belgium. Okay, here's Belgium up here. When they cut through Belgium, Belgium calls in on its ally, Great Britain. Great Britain is right there. Okay. And then a couple more places. We have the Ottoman Empire here. They're going to join the side of Germany, Austria-Hungary. And let's not forget the boot here. The boot is Italy. Okay, the boot is Italy. Now, these pink areas here, Great Britain, Belgium, France, Italy, Serbia, Russia, they are going to form the Allied powers. And when we get involved in the war, we are going to join their side. We're going to join the side of the Allied powers. On the opposite side, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Ottoman Empire, the orange countries here, those are your central powers. Okay, those are your central powers right there. All right? So those are the two alliance systems in World War I. Allied powers and Central Powers. Now, the two groups, Central Powers, Allied powers. You need to know the Central Powers are Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. The Allied powers, Great Britain, France, Belgium, Italy. Italy switches sides. Italy had been on the Central Power side, but then it's going to switch sides to the Allied side. Serbia, Russia, and later the United States. All right, but those are the two sides during World War I. Right now, the United States is remaining neutral. Now, we do have a close relationship with Great Britain. So we are beginning to send supplies to the Allied side, but we are not officially in the war yet. In part because of this, the fact that we are sending supplies to the Allied nations, that's going to bother the Central Power side, and Germany in 1915 and before lets the world know that they're going to engage in unrestricted submarine warfare. And they say, we will sink any ship that we find in the Atlantic because we don't know if it's just a regular ship, like a passenger ship or a fishing vessel or something like that, or if you guys are smuggling arms to our enemies, the Allies. And in 1915, Germany, the German submarines, the German U-boats, are going to sink a key British passenger ship called the Lusitania. And the Lusitania was carrying U.S. passengers. When the Lusitania sinks, okay, Americans get upset. But we are still not prepared to enter the war yet. Some other things are going to happen, and I'll be honest with you, that's where we're headed in the next lesson, what eventually gets us into World War I. But even after the Lusitania, for 3 years, the United States is going to remain neutral. But eventually, because of other events and because of just general pressure from the world, President Woodrow Wilson is going to call for war in 1917. And that's where we're headed in our next lesson. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Okay, go back over this material. Don't forget there is a little quiz on this. Do that before we move on to the next lesson, which is all about the U.S. entry into the war.